Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Evan's News. This May had a little bit of technical issues. For some reason, Stream Chat wasn't enabled, which was, fun, but that's okay. What we are doing right now is I had a little bit of a new emergency stream just because I had a lot of thoughts on my brain, right, that I wanted to get into, and then we're going to end it pretty soon, as unfortunately I don't have a lot of time to stream today. There's no camera, as you can see. Still got to get that set up with the new PC. But we will perhaps soon have the camera. Anyway, just wanted to get this in because I don't think I'm going to have time to stream tomorrow either, or the next day, and I want to touch on this while it's relatively recent. So Pete Hegzeth, gosh, I never know how to say his name. All right, so good old Petey boy, good old Peter.
Hey, Peter.
So good old Peter, he called a meeting of the minds, one can say, a meeting of the minds, right? And in this meeting of the minds, good old Peter, our friend, our, our glorious leader of the Department of War now, no longer the Department of Defense, he called a meeting of all of our, top military officials, generals of a bunch of ranks, all that kind of stuff. I'm not even going to pretend like I understand the structure of the military, right, to anything beyond a super duper surface level. So I'm not going to say anything beyond that. I think there were officers and stuff too. Like I said, though, I don't have that good of an understanding of the way that the military works. So anyway, so Pete, he calls a bunch of folks over, right? He says, and I need to have my audio switched over to my new audio source, which, awesome, is going to be this. Awesome, it recognized that. So he calls this essentially meeting, right? And it's very odd at first, right? It was very, very odd. I have no idea. That's right. We have officially changed the name of the Department of Defense to the Department of War. This is because genuinely I don't know. I genuinely don't know what the point of it was. It was called originally the Department of War. Like back in the day, the Department of Defense was called the Department of War. And then once the Cold War happened and we were technically not at war, but we still needed to justify this really high military expense, we changed the name to the Department of Defense because we were still using the Department of War in times when we were no longer at war. So we changed it, and Department of Defense just sounds a lot better, right? That's fundamentally why we did it. It sounds a lot better. It's like we're funding our defense, not our offense, right? But anyway, Pete Hegzeth, he changed it to the Department of War. Why he did this, what benefit does this have, I genuinely have no idea. Seriously, I have no idea why we decided to change this. But hey, we did. Here we have our brand new Department of War. Huzzah. So be it. But anyway, a couple of days ago, it was announced that Pete Hegzeth, the Secretary of War, no longer the Secretary of Defense, Secretary of War, called an in-person meeting of a lot of generals, upper echelons of military staff, right? High-ranking officials. And he calls them back to the Pentagon for an in-person meeting. And what's weird about this, why it's weird that it's this is first off really, really weird. Because he called generals that were deployed all over the globe, right, to come back to the Pentagon to have this meeting that he wanted to have, right? And in this, what he does, right, is he is calling back generals that are deployed in a bunch of places, like I just said. So meaning that if a general like is in an active, zone of conflict, right? Like, because the United States obviously has its hands all across the world, right? They have to come from that conflict zone, wherever that might be, and come back to the Pentagon, right? A lot of times meetings are done virtually because these generals need to be where they are, right? They need to be in command of troops wherever they're stationed, right? They want to be close to where the action is. That way they can control where the action is, Like, you usually don't want an admiral away from their fleet for too long, right? So anyway, what old Pete does is he calls this in-person meeting before all of these high-ranking officials. So all of these high-ranking officials, again, I want to emphasize, this is really odd because a lot of these generals have jobs to do where they are, right? They have actual things that they need to do where they are. Now they have to leave their position to come to this weird-ass meeting with Petey Boy, right? They have to come out. They have to come over to Pete's. They have to come over to the Pentagon, right? Where Pete needs to have this meeting, and he's not telling anyone about the meeting, no details about the meeting, right? It's really weird. It's weird, and it is sus. It's super duper sus. Because why is everyone coming? Why is Pete calling all these people here? Why is he having this meeting, which could, that's just rude. Oh, Emma, welcome to the stream. Great to see you again. And I completely agree. That is rude. Very, very rude. Because, like, they have something to do, right? They're doing things. They're doing their thing. So Pete calls them over to have this weird-ass meeting. This super-duper weird-ass meeting. We're going to go get into what happened in the meeting pretty soon. I'm giving context for right now. Let me see if I can find the video. So, some reporters were, kind of... Sorry, guys. Just getting over getting sick. Some reporters... Trump asked about Pete meeting. Let me see if I can find the exact clip of Trump. I want to see if I can find it. But essentially, Trump was asked about the meeting, right? Trump was asked by reporters. I want to find the clip. Where is the clip? Trump. Pete Hegseth meeting with generals. Let me see if I can find a clip. It's all out of date at this point because this is a few days ago. Yeah, guys, I'm sorry. I'm not going to be able to find this clip. I would be spending too much time that I do not have to find this clip. But essentially, in this clip, what happens is Trump's asked about the meeting. He's like, the reporters are like, isn't it kind of weird that the Secretary of Defense is asking to meet with all the top ranking generals, and you're not going to be there too? Like, what? Like, isn't that something that the president would normally do? Because that would make sense if the president was calling, like, because the president's the commander-in-chief, right? But the Secretary of Defense, now war, doing it is a little bit odd. That's a little bit strange. So Trump is asked by a reporter, essentially saying, like, hey, isn't this weird? Like, what do you think? And Trump responds in an interesting way. The way Trump responds, essentially, is what he says, what Trump says, is that he doesn't understand why it's such a big deal for us to get along with generals. He keeps saying that I'm the president of peace, so why shouldn't we all want to get along? Which is interesting because that implies that from Trump's perspective, what he thought this meeting was a meeting with foreign generals, right? Like generals of other countries that we would want to get along with. You know what I mean? Because, like, why would you say that about meeting with your own generals in your own country? Yeah, that's not what was happening. So it seems like Trump actually didn't know really the full details about what was going on. And I think when Trump figured it out, right, when Trump figured out what was going on, he didn't really fuck with it, right? He really, really didn't fuck with what was going on. I wish I can get some clips because the whole thing is really crazy. There's a couple of things that we're going to get into. But Trump ends up saying that he is going to go. Sorry, I should have prepared a bunch of clips. This was an emergency stream, so you guys are just going to mostly hear me yap for a little bit. Promise in my next stream I'll go into this a little bit better and, you know, actually give better context and stuff instead of just spewing out my flustered ideas. So Trump did actually attend this because he was like, why the fuck is the Secretary of Defense meeting with all of our top generals in a meeting that I'm not completely aware of? Because that's what it seems like. So he ends up going because obviously Trump wants to go. Why would you let your Secretary of Defense meet with all those generals? That seems like a power play to me, at least. But anyway, the meeting happens. And you know what? Let's just watch a clip together from this. Let's just watch a clip together, guys. Oof. This might be... Also, how's the audio on your guys' end? Please let me know if it's too loud. I just reinstalled OBS. So stuff might be too loud or too quiet for a quick sec until I can figure out my audio balance. Listening to myself on microphone right now, but that's like a live... That's like me hearing myself live. So that's not going to tell me anything. Audio is fine so far. Okay, perfect. Now we're going to get into desktop audio. That's what's really going to tell us whether or not it's okay. All right, let's watch this clip.
It all starts with physical fitness and appearance. If the Secretary of War can do regular, hard PT, so can every member of our joint force.
That's just too loud for me, not going to lie.
Frankly, it's tiring to look out at combat formations or really any formation and see physical fitness and appearance. If the
Sorry, I'm just going to start it all over again.
It all starts with physical fitness and appearance. If the Secretary of War can do regular, hard PT,
referring
so
to himself,
can every member of our joint force. Frankly, it's tiring to look out at combat formations or really any formation and see fat troops. Likewise, it's completely unacceptable to see fat generals and admirals in the halls of the Pentagon and leading commands around the country and the world. It's a bad look. It is bad, and it's not who we are. So whether you're an airborne ranger or a chairborne ranger, a brand new private or a four-star general, you need to meet the height and weight standards and pass your PT test. And as the chairman said, yes, there is no PT test. But today, at my direction, every member of the joint force at every rank is required to take a PT test twice a year, as well as meet height and weight requirements twice a year. Every year of service. Also today, at my direction, every warrior across our joint force is required to do PT every duty day. Should be common sense. I mean, most units do that already, but we're codifying it. And we're not talking like hot yoga and stretching. Real hard PT, either as a unit or as an individual. At every level, from the Joint Chiefs to everyone in this room to the youngest private, leaders set the standard. And so many of you do this already. Active, Guard, and Reserve.
We thank you for watching it.
All right, so we have that clip. Fun little clip. Great little clip. Let's get into it, shall we? So, obviously, things have been getting pretty bad pretty quickly lately, right? We have been seeing the erosion, more like the collapse of our democracy. We've been seeing the National Guard being like deployed places, which, by the way, we will talk about. we have been seeing this get very bad. It's obviously like we are descending towards fascism. There's no getting around that. But I think what Pete's frankly stupid meeting was, because like this could have been an email, man. This could have been this could have been a Zoom call. I'm not going to lie. This is even like a national security risk, what he just said. You know what I mean? And this was like an hour-long address, right? There was more stuff that was said. But I really do want to address this because as we descend into fascism, one of the aspects of fascism that really needs to be like shown, and I think this clip shows it the most, is the vibes side of fascism. Because fundamentally what fascism is, I was doing laundry and saw we were so back. We are so back, but only for a short time. I just had thoughts about what was going on and really just wanted to talk about it. So I'm just basically here to yap. Y'all are my audience, so I might as well yap to y'all. So what is going on? What is going on? Okay. So essentially what's going on is that this is showing like the vibes-based side of fascism, right? I remember we used to talk about this a lot back in the day, right? When I used to stream a lot more regularly, which has been going on like 2 or 3 years at this point, was that fascism is an emotional ideology, right? At the end of the day, it talks about who's destroying the nation. It wants an enemy for people to be afraid and angry at. That's how fascism thrives. Fascism is a vibes and emotions based political ideology at its core. And I think this shows it, right? Pete decides that what he's going to do is call all these top military officials from around the world, right? That's what happened. They got called from around the world to come here and basically be told you need to work out more. Like, again, there was a lot more in this meeting that was said, right? But it's like what Pete is mad at fundamentally is his perception of what the military should look like. That's what he's mad about. You know what I mean? Because the thing is, right, whether or not a general is fat or whatever doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter, right? Like, the general can still do their job, which is what people are most concerned about. It does not matter. They're like, obviously you want them to be in like good physical health. That way they can do their job. You don't want them like physically declining, mentally declining and stuff. But at the end of the day, if they're tubby, who gives a fuck? Like, seriously, nobody gives a fuck. Have you guys seen pictures of, oh my God, why am I forgetting his name? Of MacArthur? The man had a little belly, right? He wasn't like in peak physical form. And I'm not trying to body shame right now, right? I'm really not trying to body shame. This is not me body shaming MacArthur. I'm just pointing out the fact that MacArthur had a little belly. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Because he wasn't constantly like on the field doing stuff. His job was mostly about pushing pencils and stuff. Like, that was the crust of his job. Fundamentally, that's what his job was like giving orders and everything. So he wasn't always going to be super buff, super muscular and stuff. Like, that's okay. And you know what? That's kind of how it is. Also, MacArthur was old. Old people, you know, they tend to also just gain a little bit of, that just kind of comes with aging too. You know what I mean? So there's that as well. But what I'm trying to say fundamentally is A, not trying to body shame MacArthur. He looked great. Wonderful. I mean, he wasn't that great as a person. Don't get me wrong, guys. But you know, that's just kind of the way it goes. So when Pete calls all these top military officials essentially, may I just say, to body shame them, like fundamentally, like that's what he did. And to say like that's not what we want to look like. He's not mad about how the military's doing in practice. He's mad about the vibe that the military gives, because that's what fascists care about. They care about, like, essentially the vibe that you're giving off. They want to make sure you conform to what their idea of what the military should be, what it should be like, which is this hyper-masculine institution, which is why they got so mad about trans people in the military, because they were like, trans people don't belong in the military. Like, why would you do that? Even though, from like the military's perspective, trans people are more troops. They want more troops in the military. That's what the military does. And what the fascist is most concerned about, again, I don't mean to like reiterate this fact. Well, I do mean to reiterate this fact, is the vibe that it gives off. That is what the fascist is most concerned about. And I think that Pete's little spiel that he just gave about the military needing to be like physically fit and stuff is a perfect reflection of that more vibes-based side of fascism. Because in reality, again, this shit doesn't matter. Genuinely, this shit doesn't matter. Like, for how ready the military is for deployment, the generals being not in tippity top shape literally does not matter. That's the way, like, that it does not matter. And more importantly, he just comes in and, like, from the military's perspective, it's this guy that just summoned them away from their jobs, right? A lot of them had to scramble together to like get over here. He's just that, and he's just like, oh yeah, by the way, you all need to get into shape. Like, seriously, I got called all the way from across the globe to be here. This is stupid. This is a stupid meeting, because a lot of them don't have a lot of time to spare. Like, they're doing stuff a lot of the time. So that's one thing that I wanted to talk about. That's one thing that I want to talk about, that I was just really wanted to get off my chest. This meeting was stupid. It was simply put stupid. It did not need to happen. But Trump's speech in it, well, we should probably also watch a little bit of that, shouldn't we? Let's see. Trump. Can we look at Trump's speech? That's all I want to watch. Trump and Hexeth. Is this just going to be... I feel like this is just going to be clips. Don't want to see clips. I want to see the full... I want to see the full Trump speech. Before generals... I swear, I saw all these clips before. This is from The View. Okay. Well, The View's going to show us the clip that we need. The View, we're all relying on The View for our information today. God bless The View. Wonderful, wonderful. I know, like a little treat. It's like a little reward. All right. A little as a treat. Okay, everybody, prepare yourselves. This is going to be a fun one. This is going to be great. An important part is the context that Trump is going to send National Guards folks into Portland and has authorized them to use full force. So keep that context in mind. Keep it in your noggin while we watch this clip.
Your rank, there goes your future. We went, in a way, woke. That was probably the first sign of wokeness. And we changed it to defense instead of war. And I said, what do you think? How do you think we...
That's another thing. Like, again, like the changing of the Department of Defense to war. That sounds more masculine. That gives off a better vibe, even though it was, like, well before the age of wokeness that we changed it to the Department of Defense. I think was literally back in like the 50s or 60s or something. It was a Cold War era decision to do that. But yeah, another thing about like wokeness in the military that people keep talking about. Like wokeness in the military is not a thing. I'm sorry to keep going on like the vibes thing. Because obviously they want to purge like their political enemies from the military too. They want to make sure nobody's in there that can stand up to them, right? We get that. But also like the Republican concern, this was a concern during the Biden administration too, of quote unquote wokeness in the military is just simply put not a thing. That's not a problem. It's quite literally not a problem at all. Because at the end of the day, even if your general is like trans, they're still a general. They're still there to, you know, further United States interests and all that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? Again, like from the military's perspective, it makes sense to have more soldiers. So it makes sense to bring in trans soldiers so you have more soldiers. But no. That to them, they would quite literally rather weaken the US military and give it like the vibe that they want than to, you know, have a more effective military. You know, whatever.
Change it back. Would that be a nice idea? I thought it would be met with fury on the left, but they're sort of giving up, I must be honest with you. They've had it. They've had it with Trump. You don't have to be that good with nuclear. You could have 1/20th what you have now and still do the damage. You can't let people throw around that word. I call it the N word. There are two N words, and you can't use either of them.
This is one of his, like, one of the things he does where he starts talking about the, there's a specific clip.
It also didn't make, I don't understand.
Okay. The View is not going to be our savior, I feel like.
So, ladies and gentlemen,
Make the change. And then one of them, AP, took us to court.
Gosh, it's one clip that I'm looking for. Gosh darn it. Okay. We're going to say, let's see. Maybe it was at the beginning, because I remember I reacted to it pretty quickly. Sorry, guys. I promise I will have you something to actually listen to.
That one said, make the change. And then one of them, AP, took us to court. Greatest and most elite fighting force in the history of Have a Good Time. And he gave a great speech, but he talked about it, by the way. They call it the Gulf of Mexico. I said, over there, in many different, in China, in submarines. Russia's actually some of these.
Like, I mean, you guys are just here. I'm just trying to look for a specific quote where he quite literally says, we are going to need to start focusing more on the enemy within, specifically referring to people within our country. That's what he said to top military officials, that we are going to need to start focusing more on the enemy within. You know, obviously the fact that he keeps sending in the National Guard to different cities, all obviously being left-leaning cities, is just him showing the fact that this has been his plan for a good long while. This is what he, this is what he's been planning for a while. And now I realize that I have no idea where in the speech he says that. Let me see. But you guys can also just hear from the speech that he's just kind of rambling about nothing. Like,
And so my message to you is very simple. I am with you. I support you. And as president, I have your backs 100%. You'll never see me even.
that's nice, Trump. Let me see.
It is what it is. But all of the Arab nations, Muslim,
Where does he say it?
Second World War, they were freighters and different types. But we were.
Enemy within. Let me see. Because I think he literally used, awesome. There we go. It's going to be a YouTube short, guys. It's going to be, his platform is built on rambling about nothing. It literally is. He quite consistently rambles about zero things. Let's see if this one is. This seems like it.
Today, the president made a public address so everyone could
Let's see.
see.
Does this have the clip? Yeah, this looks like it's going to have the clip.
A war zone. They're brave. in our inner cities, which we're going to be talking about, because it's a big part of war now. It's a big part of war.
Vanson, welcome again to the chat. I wanted to make a quick stream that was essentially talking about exactly what happens with the whole, speech to, what do you call it? With the speech to the generals and all that kind of stuff that Pete Hegseth and Trump gave today. Want to talk about that very quickly before I have to go again because I have work soon. But I do want to talk about this because there's a lot to talk about.
The radical left Democrats, what they've done to San Francisco, Chicago, New York, Los Angeles, they're very unsafe places, and we're going to straighten them out one by one. We should use some of these dangerous cities as training grounds for our military, National Guard, but military, because we're going into Chicago very soon.
The president making a wholly unprecedented.
Let me see. Does it have more? I don't really care
for
what he has
yourself,
to
as
say.
he insists,
I care more about more of the Trump clips, which have been fun.
Last month, I signed an executive order to provide training for quick reaction force that can help quell civil disturbances. This is going to be a big thing for the people in this room because it's the enemy from within, and we have to handle it before it gets out of control. While America is under invasion from
There we go.
within, we're under invasion from within. No different than a foreign enemy, but more difficult in many ways because they don't wear uniforms. At least when they're wearing a uniform, you can take them out. These people don't have uniforms.
Yep.
But we are under invasion from within.
Things, yeah, so Trump said that in front of all of our military, which, by the way, I want to reemphasize that he called back from active duty zones to talk to say essentially for Pete to come up and say that they're all too chunky, I guess, and they all need to work out and stuff, and for also to deliver a speech which emphasizes the fact that there's an enemy from within that we need to beat. He also talks about how some people may not like what he has to say and that they can walk out, but then they'd lose their job if they walk out of that meeting. So quite literally, if they didn't attend this stupid meeting and scary meeting as well, as he's quite literally telling top military officials that we are being invaded from within. Yeah. Things are gonna get worse, guys, as they have been quite rapidly over the past year. With that, though, I do need to get going. Cannot stream forever. But I hope you all have a wonderful day. I hope you all have a wonderful afternoon. And I will see y'all on the flippity flop. Peace out.